The room was dark, except for the soft glow of the lamp by the window. Her skin looked like it was made of firelight, warm and alive against the pale sheets. She leaned closer, her breath slow, her lips trembling as if she carried words she didn't dare speak. My hands moved on their own, tracing her curves, her warmth, her need. I shouldn't have been there. I shouldn't have let it go this far. But when you are caught in that kind of moment, when every nerve in your body screams louder than reason, you don't think about rules or promises. You only think about the heat, about the way her eyes dared me to take one more step. Her fingers pressed into my chest, soft but firm, pushing me back just enough to make me want her more. "You know this is wrong," she whispered, almost like a warning. "I know," I said. My voice was low, heavy. My hands stayed on her hips. I didn't let go. The air between us thickened, filled with something dangerous. Her lips parted. She leaned closer, and in that second, I swear the world stopped moving. And just before everything exploded, before the night swallowed us whole, I need you to pause with me. If you're watching this right now, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone, and hit that subscribe button. Because what I'm about to tell you is not fiction. This isn't a cheap story pulled from the internet. This is my life, my choices, my sins, and the way it all broke me. Now let me take you back to how it all began. I grew up believing marriage was the final chapter of romance. You meet someone, you fall in love, you stand at the altar, and the rest is simple. I was wrong. My wife and I met in college. She was the type of girl everyone noticed, but only a few had the courage to approach. Not because she was unkind, but because she carried herself with a confidence that could turn a man's knees weak. The first time she looked at me, really looked, I thought I was dreaming. And when she smiled, I knew I was lost. We got married young, too young, maybe. The wedding was small but beautiful. A church in the middle of town, stained glass windows glowing as the sun poured in. Friends cheered. Family clapped. And when I said my vows, I meant every word. I believed in forever. The first years were everything a man could ask for. Long nights tangled in sheets. Lazy mornings with her head resting on my chest. Laughter spilling into the kitchen as we burned pancakes, but didn't care because we were happy. I thought that was enough. But America has a way of wearing you down. Bills, work, the grind of routine, it all comes creeping in. She worked late. I worked later. Some nights we barely spoke except for good night. Passion turned into habit. Habit turned into silence. And silence, if you let it, turns into a wall you can't climb. It was during one of those long, lonely evenings that I first realized something was missing. Not love. I still loved her. But the spark, the fire that used to make my hands tremble just looking at her. She felt it too, though neither of us said it out loud. Instead, we filled the silence with small talk. Netflix, takeout dinners. Safe. Boring. Until one night. I was sitting at a bar downtown, nothing fancy. Just one of those dim places with old country. Music playing in the background. And men drinking beer straight from the bottle. I wasn't there to cheat. At least, that's what I told myself. I was just there to escape the quiet of our house. That's when I met her. She wasn't the kind of woman who walked into a room unnoticed. The heels clicked, the perfume lingered. And when she slid onto the bar stool 2 seats away from me, it felt like the whole room shifted to make space for her. "Rough day?" she asked, nodding toward my glass. I chuckled. Something like that. We talked. About nothing, really. Work, traffic. The kind of things strangers use to fill empty air. But her eyes never looked away from mine. And when she laughed, she touched my arm, just lightly, as if testing me. I should have left. But I didn't. That was the first step. One conversation. One drink. And suddenly, I was walking home with her number in my phone. When I got home that night, my wife was already asleep. She looked peaceful, her hair spread across the pillow, her lips slightly parted. I stood there in the doorway, phone burning in my pocket, and felt like a criminal. I hadn't done anything yet, but in my heart, I had already crossed a line. The next day, I told myself I wouldn't call. By the second day, I was staring at her number. By the third day, I sent a message. That's how it started. Now, I know what you're thinking. Men cheat. Women cheat. It's the same story told 1,000 times. But this wasn't just cheating. This was different. Because soon, my wife found out. And here's the part you won't believe. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't throw me out or pack her bags. Instead, she looked at me with this strange calm. this fire in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. And she said 5 words that changed everything. I want to watch. At first, I thought she was joking. I laughed. She didn't. She stood there, arms folded, lips tight, eyes burning into me. You want to what? I asked. I want to watch, she repeated. If you're going to do this, I want to see it. I didn't know if she was crazy or brilliant. Maybe both. But that was the moment my marriage stopped being ordinary. That was the moment I realized she wasn't blind. She wasn't weak. She wanted control. She wanted to see me broken, tested, exposed. And in a way I can't explain, I wanted it too. I didn't understand then what it would cost me. I didn't know how far it would go. But I do now. And if you stay with me through this story, I'll show you how a single decision can pull you into a world you never knew existed. A world of secrets, lust, and destruction. A world where my wife, my own wife, sat back and watched them break me. They say every marriage has its quiet season. Some call it routine, others call it stability. But when you live inside of it, it feels like something else. Like silence that creeps into the corners of your life. Until you forget the sound of laughter. That was where my wife and I stood. We weren't fighting. We weren't falling apart in public. To anyone watching us from the outside, we looked perfect, 2 people in a nice house on the edge of town. Good jobs, good neighbors, Sunday mornings at church, barbecues in the backyard. The American dream, wrapped in neat packaging. But behind closed doors, it was different. We were strangers sleeping in the same bed. Touches became fewer, kisses shorter, words mechanical. We still said, I love you. But it sounded more like habit than fire. I should have been grateful. Many men would kill for the life I had. But that's the curse of comfort. You start craving danger. The woman from the bar, the one who gave me her number, became the spark I didn't know I needed. It began with texts. Little things. Rough day. Wish you were here. Thinking about you. Simple words, but they carried heat my marriage hadn't given me in years. I didn't hide it well. My wife noticed my late-night phone checks. The way I turned the screen away when she walked into the room. At first, she didn't say anything. Just watched me. Studied me. Then one evening, as I sat on the couch pretending to scroll through emails, she leaned against the doorway and said, So, who is she? I froze. My throat tightened. For a second, I thought about lying. But something in her eyes told me it wouldn't matter. She already knew. I sighed. Just someone I met. At the bar. Are you sleeping with her? No, I said. And at that moment, it was true. She nodded, as if weighing my answer. But you want to. Her voice wasn't angry. It was calm. Too calm. That scared me more than if she had screamed. Yes, I whispered. That night, I expected a storm. I expected her to throw her ring at me, to pack her bags, to demand answers. Instead, she climbed into bed beside me like nothing had happened. She turned off the lamp, slid under the covers, and whispered into the dark. If you do it, I want to know. I don't want lies. I didn't sleep that night. My mind spun in circles, trying to understand. Days turned into weeks, and my conversations with the other woman deepened. She wasn't just flirting anymore. She was daring me, inviting me. Then it came. The message that lit the match. Come over this weekend. Bring your wife if you're brave enough. I stared at my phone, heart racing. I didn't know if it was a joke or a trap. I didn't know if I should laugh, delete it, or run. Instead, I showed it to my wife. She read it. Her lips curved, not into a frown, but into the faintest smile. Tell her yes, she said. My mouth went dry. Are you serious? Her eyes didn't blink. Yes. That was the first invitation. The one that pulled us into a world I never imagined I would enter. And listen, if you're still with me right now, if your chest feels heavy just reading this, pause for a second. Hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe to the channel. Because what I'm telling you next will shake the idea you have of marriage, of loyalty, of desire. Saturday night came faster than I wanted. We drove across town to an apartment complex on the east side. Not fancy, not broken down either, just one of those. Brick buildings with too many doors and too little parking space. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My wife sat beside me, calm, quiet, eyes fixed on the windshield. I kept waiting for her to change her mind, to say turn around. She never did. We found the apartment. Door number 312. I stood there with my heart pounding like a drum. My wife's hand rested on my arm. Not to stop me, to steady me. Knock, she whispered. I did. The door opened. And there she was, the woman from the bar, dressed in black silk that clung to her body like a second skin. Her lips curled into a smile, her eyes flickering from me to my wife. "You came," she said. Her voice was smooth, like honey poured over fire. She stepped aside, and we walked in. The air smelled of wine and perfume. Soft music played in the background. Candles flickered on the table. My wife sat on the couch, crossing her legs, watching everything. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She just watched. And in that silence, I felt something shift inside me. Fear, yes, but also desire. Curiosity. The kind of curiosity that kills cats and ruins men. The night stretched in ways I can barely describe. Every glance, every touch, every word felt heavier than it should. My wife's eyes on me changed everything. It wasn't just about the woman in silk anymore. It was about what my wife wanted to see. Her calmness terrified me more than anger ever could. By the time we left that apartment, I wasn't the same man who walked in. I had crossed a line I could never step back over. That was the first invitation, the start of everything that followed. And it was only the beginning. I used to believe there were only two kinds of men, the faithful and the unfaithful. You either held your vows close to your chest, or you broke them and lived with the shame. I never imagined there was a third kind, the man who broke them in front of his wife, with her eyes on him the entire time. That night in the apartment, something in me cracked. The woman in silk was bold, too bold. She leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping her wine, while my wife sat on the couch with her arms folded like a queen on a throne. The silence between the three of us was sharp enough to cut glass. "So," the woman finally said, tilting her head at me, "is she here to stop you? Or to see you?" I froze. My wife spoke before I could. "To see," she answered. Her voice was steady. Her eyes never left me. The air shifted after that. The woman smiled, slow and wicked, as if she had just been handed a gift she wasn't expecting. She walked toward me, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. When she reached me, she touched my chest with the tip of her finger, dragging it down just enough to make me swallow hard. And my wife watched. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just there to sin, I was there to perform. The first kiss was fire and guilt tangled together. My body leaned into it before my brain could catch up. Her lips were hot, her hand firm as it curled around the back of my neck. And in the corner of my eye, I saw my wife sitting there, still as stone, her gaze locked on me. Every part of me screamed to stop, but I didn't, because stopping would mean admitting weakness. Stopping would mean admitting that I wanted this just as much as my wife wanted to watch. So I kept going. The night blurred after that, clothes on the floor, whispered words, the creak of the couch, the heat of skin against skin, and always, always, the weight of my wife's stare. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't move. She watched me like a scientist observing an experiment, waiting for the results. At one point, I locked eyes with her. I expected hate. What I saw was hunger. Not hunger for the other woman. Hunger for control. For power. For the knowledge that I was doing this not behind her back, but right in front of her. And that broke me more than anything else. When it was over, the silence hit harder than the act itself. The woman in silk slipped into her bedroom, leaving me and my wife alone in the living room. I sat on the edge of the couch, breathing hard, sweat dripping down my face. My wife stood up slowly, walked over to me, and bent down until her lips brushed my ear. "You're mine," she whispered. And then she kissed my cheek, turned, and walked out the door. Driving home, neither of us spoke. The city lights flashed across the windshield, neon and gold. My hands gripped the wheel, my mind spinning so fast I thought I might crash. I wanted her to scream, to fight, to curse me for what I had done. Instead, she sat there calm, lips pressed together, eyes staring ahead. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. She hadn't lost me. She had trapped me. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't focus at work. I couldn't sleep at night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face in that apartment, her stillness, her power, the way she looked at me like I was both hers and not hers at the same time. I thought maybe it was over. Maybe she'd had her fill of control, and we'd go back to normal. I was wrong. One night, as we sat at the dinner table, plates of spaghetti between us, she said it casually, like she was asking about the weather. "When's the next time you're seeing her?" The fork froze in my hand. "What?" She tilted her head. "Don't act stupid. I know you're thinking about it." "So when?" I wasn't. Yes, you were. She leaned back, smirking. I can tell. You're restless. Your eyes give you away. I swallowed hard. Why does it matter? Because, she said, I want to be there again. That was when I knew this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a path, a road I had stepped onto without realizing there was no exit. And listen, if you've made it this far into my story, if your heart is pounding just imagining yourself in my shoes, pause for a second. Hit the like button. Share this video. Subscribe to the channel. Because what I'm about to tell you next is the moment where fantasy turned into something darker. The second meeting wasn't like the first. This time, my wife wasn't quiet. She didn't just sit back and watch like some silent judge. She leaned in, asked questions, directed the flow of the night as if she was the director of a play. And I was her actor. Do it slower, she said at one point, her voice low but commanding. Look at me when you touch her, she said another time. Her words were chains. I followed every one of them. And with each command, I felt myself breaking. Not because I didn't enjoy it, I did, but because I wasn't in control anymore. She was. That was the real betrayal. Not that I had cheated, not that she had let me, but that she owned me completely, body and mind, while I pretended to be the one crossing the line. By the time that night ended, I wasn't the same man. I was hollowed out, filled with something I couldn't name. Shame, maybe. Lust, definitely. Fear, most of all. And when we drove home, she finally spoke. You liked it, she said, not as a question but as a fact. I didn't answer. She smiled, just faintly, staring out the window. Good. Because this is only the beginning. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just cheating on my wife. I was surrendering to her. Morning sunlight spilling through the blinds never felt so cruel. It used to be a promise of a new day. But after those nights, it felt like a spotlight on my sins. I'd wake up next to my wife, her head resting lightly on the pillow, her hair spread across the sheets. She'd look peaceful, even gentle. But I knew better. Behind that calm face was the same woman, who had whispered commands in my ear, while another woman's lips were on mine. And every morning, I asked myself the same question. Was I still her husband? Or just her puppet? Life didn't stop because of what we were doing. Bills still came in the mail. Work still demanded my time. Neighbors still waved from across their yards. We hosted a cookout one Saturday, burgers on the grill, kids running through sprinklers, laughter carrying into the summer air. To everyone else, we looked normal, perfect, even. But underneath the smell of barbecue and the sound of laughter, I carried the weight of secrets. The truth burned in my chest while I smiled and passed out beers. I watched my wife chatting with the neighbor's wife, her smile bright, her laugh warm. And I wondered if they had any idea who she really was, who we really were. If they looked close enough, would they see the cracks? Would they notice the hunger in her eyes? That wasn't meant for small talk in PDA meetings. It became a double life. By day, I was the husband mowing the lawn, paying the bills, holding her hand at church. By night, I was the man she controlled, the man she watched as I did what I swore I'd never do. It didn't stop with the woman in silk. That was only the beginning. My wife opened doors I didn't even know existed, introductions, gatherings, private invitations that arrived like whispers in the dark. Each time, I told myself it would be the last. Each time, I walked back through our front door hollow and changed. The strange part was, she never pushed me into it. She never begged or forced. She only suggested. She only looked at me with that calm fire in her eyes. The same fire that burned the first night and said things like, "You'll do it again. You like the way it felt. Don't lie. I can see it in you." And she was right. That was the hardest part. She was always right. I started losing pieces of myself. At work, I'd sit at my desk staring at numbers on a screen. But my mind replayed nights I swore I'd never speak of. I couldn't concentrate. My boss asked me once if I was okay. I lied and said I was tired. Friends invited me out for drinks, but I made excuses. What would I even tell them? How do you sit across from a buddy with a beer in your hand and admit, "My wife lets me sleep with other women while she watches"? So I stayed quiet. Silence became my companion. Silence, and my wife's knowing smile. It was on a Friday night when things shifted again. We were driving back from dinner, the city lights flashing against the windshield. She was quiet, her hands folded in her lap. I thought she was tired. Then she turned to me and said, "I want more." I gripped the steering wheel. More what? More than watching. More than just you and one woman. I want to see you broken. Her words hit like a punch. Broken? She nodded slowly. her lips curling into something between a smile and a threat. Yes, I want to see how far you'll go. How much you'll take before you can't take anymore. My chest tightened. I didn't know whether to be terrified or aroused. Why? I asked. She looked out the window, her reflection glowing in the glass. Because you belong to me, and I want to test what that means. If you're listening right now, if your chest feels heavy with every word, stop for just a second. Because what comes next isn't just a game. It's the beginning of my undoing. The next invitation came from someone new. Not the woman in silk. Another one. Someone my wife had chosen. That was when I realized she wasn't just a spectator anymore. She was the architect. She arranged it all. The meeting place. The time. The way it would unfold. And me? I followed. Because at that point, I wasn't leading my life anymore. I was being led. I won't lie. The nights grew darker, heavier. There were times I looked into her eyes across the room and felt like I was being pulled apart, piece by piece. Her gaze wasn't just curious anymore. It was hungry, like she fed on my surrender. I tried to tell myself it was only physical, that it was just lust. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't about bodies. It was about power. My wife didn't just want to see me cheat. She wanted to see me collapse, to watch me unravel until there was nothing left but the shell of the man she married. And the sickest part? Some part of me wanted it too. The more it happened, the less I recognized myself. I'd catch my reflection in the mirror, eyes darker, face harder, mouth drawn tight. The man staring back at me wasn't the man who said vows in a church with stained glass windows. That man was gone, and in his place stood someone who lived in the shadows, someone who carried secrets like scars. The unraveling wasn't just inside me. It was in us, too. My wife and I still held hands in public, still smiled for pictures, still waved at the neighbors. But behind closed doors, the marriage wasn't a marriage anymore. It was an experiment, a theater, a stage where I played my role, and she pulled the strings. Some nights, lying beside her, I wondered if she still loved me, or if love had turned into something else, ownership, obsession, control. But then she'd touch my face softly, kiss me like she used to, and whisper, "You're mine." And I believed her. The unraveling wasn't fast. It was slow, steady, like a thread being pulled from a sweater one loop at a time. You don't notice the hole until the fabric falls apart in your hands. And by then, it's too late. That's where I was. Too late to turn back. Too far to pretend I could stop. And standing at the edge of that road, I knew the breaking point was coming. The night that changed everything started out like any other Friday. I had convinced myself that I would keep it light, maybe just flirt a little, maybe test the edges of what I had built with them. But when the clock ticked past 10 and the wine was half gone, I already knew I wasn't going back to the woman I was before. If you're watching this right now, let me pause and remind you. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with someone who loves a story that doesn't hold back. What I'm telling you isn't the kind of thing you'll hear in polite company. This is raw. This is real. The three of them were waiting for me. They didn't have to say much. The looks in their eyes said everything. A hunger that mirrored mine. A decision that had already been made long before I walked into that apartment. I told myself it was still my choice. That I could walk away. That the door was behind me, unlocked, waiting for me if I needed it. But in my chest, I already knew. I wasn't going anywhere. The first kiss felt different. Not stolen, not playful, not harmless flirting. It was deep, slow, dangerous. My body betrayed me, leaning into it, craving more. The air was hot, thicker than any room should be. The kind of heat that makes you dizzy. They didn't rush. That's what made it worse, or better, depending on how you see it. Every touch, every laugh, every whisper was a carefully placed brick in a wall that separated me from who I used to be. Somewhere in the middle of it all, my phone buzzed. I didn't check it, but I knew it was him. My husband. Probably asking if I was okay, if I needed him to pick me up, if I had eaten. A normal husband doing normal husband things, while his wife was getting lost in something he could never imagine. And that was when it hit me. He didn't know. He had no idea. He trusted me. And I was breaking that trust piece by piece, kiss by kiss, touch by touch. I wanted to stop. I told myself I should stop. But I didn't. By the time the night was over, I was undone. My body, my heart, my conscience, they were all in pieces scattered across that room. And the worst part? I didn't regret it. Not even a little. When I finally made it home, he was asleep on the couch, the TV still on. the soft light of the screen glowing across his face. He had waited for me. He always waited for me. I stood there for a long time, staring at him. My chest ached, my throat burned, but my legs didn't move. I couldn't bring myself to wake him. Couldn't bring myself to kiss his forehead like I used to. Because I knew if I did, the guilt would swallow me whole. And that's where I leave you, for now. Because stories like this don't have clean endings. They bleed, they stretch, they echo long after the last word. If you've been following me this far, do me one last favor. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it. Maybe you'll understand why I had to tell it. Maybe you'll see a part of yourself in it. Or maybe you'll judge me, like so many will. Either way, I've spoken, and there's no turning back.